I'm not ready. I'm not ready. Hey everyone. Welcome back to Comic Book Women. On today's show, we'll be interviewing Richard Hamilton. He is the writer of Scooped Varied Leads. And on the second part, we'll be talking about our mystery picks. So sit back and enjoy the show. Hey everyone, welcome to Comic Book Women. As Jen already mentioned, we are going to kick the night off with award-winning author and screenwriter Richard Ashley Hamilton, best known for his storytelling in Dreamworks' How to Train Your Dragon and Guillermo del Toro's Trollhunters, Tales of Arcadia. Richard is currently working on his ongoing original youth graphic novel series, Scoop, for Insight Comics. But we'll get to all that and more in just a second. Richard, welcome on in. Thank you so much for coming out. The girls and I are super excited.
Thank you for having me. I'm the one who's excited. I'm very happy to be here.
It's always cool when we have somebody that's brave enough to come on a show of all women.
Yeah, well, I'll take my chances. You guys seem okay.
Yeah, it's a little daunting, but we'll take it easy on you. All right, so if you are just hopping in, guys, Richard Hamilton is here with us tonight. We are going to be discussing his new book. But before we get to that, we want to go over some of his past accomplishments, starting off with, oh my God, love How to Train Your Dragon, one of my favorites.
Yeah, me too.
So can you tell us very quickly, what was your contribution to this series?
I worked on it basically on and off for about 10 years. I started at Dreamworks as a temp, and one of my first jobs was just filling in for a week on the first How to Train Your Dragon. And I saw the art boards up on the walls, and I saw headshots of the cast, and it was like basically the cast of Superbad, and it's like, this is gonna be kind of cool, and like Shrek is fine, but this was more my speed. And then as the years went by, I got to be the assistant to Dean Debois, who's the director of the movies and the writer of them, and I was assistant on Dragon 2, and I was also the script coordinator, so I got to spend a lot of time with the screenplay. And Dean was very cool about letting us make contributions, jokes, and lines of dialogue or plot ideas. And then that led to me writing an episode of the Dragons TV show on Netflix, Race to the Edge. And then that led to me writing some books, including these comics that I co-wrote with Dean for Dark Horse, which was very cool and trippy for me, because when Dean interviewed me to be his assistant script coordinator, he just asked about me, and I said I was a big comic book fan and I've self-published comics. And he said that he loved comics and he wanted to make comics, but he didn't know how to break in, and so that's why he did animation. And at that moment, I kind of had this like private hope that maybe one day Dean and I'll make comics together. And then a couple years later, we were. So it was a very bucket list for me, and I'm really happy with the way it turned out.
Wow, that's amazing. That's so cool.
You guys, he just very nonchalantly just went over, I did this little Dragon's Edge. Didn't you win a daytime Emmy for that, for best writing?
Well,
he's so humble.
The writing staff did. I was a freelance writer on it. So, I say, how do I say it? So the writing team won it, but I was a freelancer just for that season, but they were never nominated for writing Emmys for any of the other seasons where I was not in the room. So I don't know, you draw whatever conclusions you want to have, but
so you help them.
Well, I don't know. I had also done a lot of stuff just building the franchise, like coming up with a lot of dragons, a lot of the names for like Hiccup's technology and other things that you see on Burke. And so they used a lot of that information as kind of like grist for some of the episodes, but I don't mean to like overstate my contributions to it. And in truth, it was I who learned a tremendous amount from them, just being in a writer's room, seeing all these different writers interacting, the personalities, how they broke a story, how they paced it out, what DreamWorks would be comfortable with, what they wouldn't be comfortable with. So it was great. I loved it.
Oh man, that
That's
sounds
awesome.
so neat. But so the Serpent's Heir, these are all standalone graphic novels based on the film series, but they take place when in conjunction to the movies?
Sorry, they take place between the second and third movies, and it was a very nice thing Dean did. At that point, everyone was, Dragon was a franchise, and everyone kind of wanted to have a little sort of different piece of it. And so Dean gave me the year between Dragon 2 and Dragon 3 to tell these stories. And so the Serpent's Heir picks up like 30 seconds after the end of Dragon 2. And then the next book, Dragon Vine, takes place maybe a couple months after that. But it was, I don't know how familiar you are with the movies, but at the end of the second movie, Hiccup is the new chief of Berk. I don't think I'm spoiling anything. His dad, Stoic, has moved on to Valhalla. And Toothless is the alpha of all dragons. And so to me, it was like, and I knew Dragon 3 was going to start a year later. So I thought that's really great. That year is like really fertile storytelling ground. And like basically what is Hiccup and Toothless's first day on the job as chiefs of the respective tribes? What does that look like? And so that's what Serpent's Heir is. And I also knew like we wanted to get Astrid to a certain place character-wise. Eret, who was introduced in Dragon 2, we wanted to kind of beef him up a little bit. And then, the other characters, the twins and Snotlout and Fishlegs are just joys to write. So it was, it just was like having all these great toys to play with in this really fun time. And then, the mission we had for the comics was every book was going to introduce at least one new dragon, one new location, and one new human character. And we also wanted the comics to be like the hub for the franchise. The movies tell really like Hiccup and Toothless's story. Yeah. The TV show focused more on, the other characters, the other dragon riders, and the video games and stuff took different pieces of it. And so the comics, we worked really hard to like take elements from all that stuff and make it feel really cohesive. So that's why you'll see characters from the TV shows and things even from the games.
Oh, I love it. Jen, you've seen this, right?
Yeah.
Who hasn't seen How to Train Your Dragon? Astrid was one of my favorites. She's such a badass. And Toothless actually reminds me of my pug. Doesn't that kind of look funny? I have this little black pug running around. It kind of looks just like that. Okay, so girls, do you have any other questions for this one, or should we move on?
No, we can move on.
Jen, you're good? So wait, really quickly though, what age group would you say this is for?
Oh, it's all ages, it's meant to be, if your kids love the Dragon movies, they can pick this up and read it. The art is very approachable. We only do about 3 panels a page. It's very open looking. The dialogue is meant to be pretty gettable. And if you don't like know what a dragon's name is, there's a lot of context clues to help you. But I also, as a parent, I've had to read some licensed books for my kids that are not great. And I feel like tearing my hair out. So I try to also make it entertaining for the grown-ups too. And if you haven't seen the movies, it's no problem. You get all the context clues you need to understand the adventure right from page 1. So.
Anthony and I watched this right alongside our kids. Like this is one of those things I could picture Anthony sitting on the couch, just reading it and enjoying it just as much as my 10-year-old would. So it's kind of nice that it can kind of fit all sizes, so to speak.
Yeah, I watched it with my son too. So yeah, they both of my kids liked it.
Very, very cool. All right, moving on to the next one before we get to the meat of it. Oh my God. All right, Trollhunters. Another awesome one, right?
Yeah. Yes. How cool is Trollhunters? Yeah.
Lucy, what do you think?
I really liked it. My 10-year-old, when it came out, I think he was like 8 or 9, and we started watching it. It was something new, and I was like, wait, what is this? And then I got, I just, sometimes I don't, some of the shows, because, they watch something over and over again. It's just, you kind of over it. But then this, I started paying attention. I was like, holy crap, this is really good. The story is really good.
Our sons are the same way. I mean, obviously we're a little biased in our household, but they still watch it over and over again, and we don't mind it at all. I think when the show first dropped on Netflix, they basically released the first 2 seasons, and we were all on winter break, and all 4 of us just watched it, and we loved it. I think we love Trollhunters for different reasons, but we all loved it. And so, kind of what you were saying about How to Train Your Dragon, and like Trollhunters is very much like co-viewing, right? Like parents and kids and anyone in between can get into it. So, and I also feel like it's a show that's almost genetically engineered for comic book fans. It has like everything you want, and Jim's very much like a Peter Parker kind of character where he's balancing his troll hunting with school and girl problems and all that good stuff.
Yeah, for any of you who haven't seen Trollhunters, it's about a 15-year-old teenager, Jim Blake. He stumbles upon an amulet that gives him powers to kind of like fight off the bad trolls, and the good trolls live under his town of Arcadia, right?
That's
Arcadia Oaks.
Arcadia Oaks, yeah. And it's really funny, and there's really like dark, moody parts in it too, and some good scares, and the action's insane. So it's kind of like a little something for everyone.
So was it the same deal with this series as it was with How to Train Your Dragon? Were you really involved with who did you work with to develop these two books?
Well,
how did they come together?
They before I worked on Dragon 2, I got lucky and I was the assistant to the chief creative officer at Dreamworks, this guy named Bill Damashki, and he knew I wanted to be a writer. And he was the one who actually brought Guillermo del Toro to Dreamworks. And he's like, hey, check this out. You might like it. And it was this treatment for a movie that Guillermo had written called Trollhunters. And it was some parts of it are different, and some parts of it have been the same all along. And so I, loved it and made no secret about it. And then I got to meet Guillermo and got to go visit his man cave, which is his house. His
that is so cool.
That was pretty amazing. I could have dropped dead then and there and been very happy. And would have probably been an exhibit in the man cave.
Wait, what was in the man cave? Give us some details.
You never seen, like, I seen photos and a little bit about it, but
there are photos because he did like a traveling museum exhibit, but it's a mixture of like a lot of props from his movies. So you'll see like a giant statue of like a kaiju from Pacific Rim. You'll see, characters from the Hellboy movies and Pan's Labyrinth and all that, but it's a lot of like libraries with all his art books, his original comic art. He has like Jack Kirby pages, and we were geeking out about that. And like I'm, in the moment, like, oh my god, I'm talking about Jack Kirby with Guillermo Torro. So it was very, very trippy, very surreal, but nice. And
Jen would have been in heaven. I can see Jen smiling just as you're describing it. She's getting excited. She's like, oh my god.
It is like my Graceland, and he had a room where it just seemed like it was raining all day long. He had one that was patterned after the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland.
Oh
and
my god!
The garage he had converted into an artist studio, and he had all these guys in there working. And what they were doing was they were designing the characters, the creatures for At the Mountains of Madness when he's going to be doing that. So, like, if as a Lovecraft fan, like seeing that was pretty mind blowing. So it's a shame that movie never got made. Maybe it will someday. But and he was just a very generous guy, and I had self-published comics up until that point, and I was pretty obnoxious about it at Dreamworks. I would, like, any chance somebody would say anything comic related, I'm like, oh, I make comics, and I handed it on, and Guillermo, Mr. Del Toro was very nice, and he looked at them and he gave me some advice and said, stick with it. And then a couple years later, I was working in a department called franchise at Dreamworks, and it was sort of, the job was to kind of like bridge the creative of the shows with, like, making comic books or toys or video games out of it, basically just kind of like making it more than just the show, but always staying true to the show. And, Dark Horse had made the Dragon comics, and I had kind of heard through the grapevine that they were going to be doing Trollhunters ones. And so I begged, I just full on begged the editors and everyone at Dreamworks would listen. Please let me write these. And then they let me co-write the first one with Mark Guggenheim.
So it worked out, begging and not giving up and keeping it going. Really quickly, hello to Frodo, Barton, Ace Cable, and Basement Issues, and everybody else who is hopping in right now to the stream. Welcome, welcome. We are so happy to have you. If you're just joining, we have Richard Hamilton. He's an author and screenwriter, all around badass with us tonight, and we are getting to the juicy stuff. So stand by. This is the tip of the iceberg, right? All right, moving on to our next chunk here, the next slide.
Ooh,
So,
Yay.
Scoop. There's actually the one that we're talking about mostly tonight is volume 2, but volume 1, breaking news, is where it all began. Can you give us a little synopsis on what this book is about?
Yeah, it's about Sophie Cooper, who is sort of like your average 14-year-old girl growing up in Miami. That's my hometown. She's Cuban American like me, and leads a pretty normal life, except her dad has been accused of this pretty heinous crime that he did not commit. And so he's on house arrest. He has the ankle monitor, the whole works. And there hasn't been a trial or anything, but the world is convinced this guy's guilty as sin. And in the news media, they're just always referring to him as if he just totally did it. And everyone thinks he did, except for his daughter, Sophie. And she, in her 14-year-old mind, thinks, well, if the news like vilified my dad and painted him out to be this bad guy, then I'm going to use the news to clear his name. So she gets an internship at a local TV news station, WMIA 7. And the only problem is they are the worst. They are total amateur hour. They show up late to every report. They get all the facts and names wrong. They make budget cuts. They've had like their Doppler repossessed, their helicopter. The weather lady has to hold up little cardboard suns and clouds in front of a map to show what the weather's going to be like. So they suck. But Sophie is so determined to find out the truth that she starts to like inspire these very jaded, washed up reporters in the newsroom. And one of them, a guy named Hal Ritz, their senior reporter, he kind of takes a liking to Sophie and takes her under his wing, starts to teach her the ropes about journalism. But because she's an intern, it's not like they've got her breaking these stories. She's like fetching coffee and they're so out of date. They have a fax machine. She loads new paper into the fax machine, that kind of stuff. And one of the days when she loads paper in the fax machine, a message actually comes through, and it's this crazy page with all this lunatic handwriting on it. And it's talking about UFOs and ghosts and alligator men. And Sophie doesn't care about any of that, but she sees one name on this fax, and it's the name of the bank that's accused her dad of this crime. And she thinks, you know what, maybe I will, on the DL, investigate some of these things. And she does, and it turns out all that crazy sci-fi stuff, it's totally true, and it's happening all around her in South Florida, and it is connected to this conspiracy against her dad. So if she can get the rest of the world to know about all these sci-fi shenanigans that are happening right under their noses, she can clear her dad's name, and Bob's your uncle, she gets a normal childhood again. So yep.
That's perfect. You sold
awesome.
me. Like,
yeah.
Jen, how did you describe this?
I said it was like Nancy Drew meets X-Files.
I love it. I will take that. I say Veronica Mars meets X-Files just because I'm a huge Veronica Mars fan, but totally.
Mars, that's another one,
Yeah, totally.
So it's got sci-fi, it's got mystery, and there's each volume has sort of like a true crime mystery that Sophie's reporting on, and then there's also like a sci-fi mystery, and they sort of intersect in interesting ways. And then there's the larger story of just what happened to her dad, what did he do, what didn't he do, and what happens as she gets closer to kind of digging out the truth on that. So
I thought that was really cool because I lived in South Florida for 11 to 12 years on South Beach. So when I was reading it, I'm like, hey, I know where this is. Hey, I used to work at that place. So, like, it was really cool. And then as I was reading, I was like, wow, like Sophie and Kit, I was really curious, like what your, like the development, like what your inspiration was for the characters.
Well, Kit, I can definitely start with. That's my little brother, Chris, who's now a man, but he was always very tech savvy, and I used to make like movies for fun as a kid, and I wasn't great at figuring out the camera. And my little brother would come up and just learn how to work it, and he's actually now like a cinematographer and making movies and commercials and stuff out here in LA. So that's how it started, and I feel like I should get some sort of percentage of whatever you make. That's separate. So Kit is very much based on my little brother, Chris. And Sophie is very much inspired by Veronica Mars, but, I also based her a lot on kind of the two smartest, strongest people I know, and that's my wife and my mom. And so she's sort of an amalgam of the two of them. And based a little bit. I had an internship at CNN when I was in college, and that kind of was the germ of the idea for Scoop. And, they always say, like, write your character smarter than you are. So that's where Sophie came from.
That's amazing. That is so cool.
That is so sweet.
Yeah, that is really nice.
My kid doesn't do shit for me. I get coupon books for my birthday. I don't get characters written after me. That's amazing.
Yeah. So please buy the book, because if it doesn't do well, then my marriage and my relationship with my mother might suffer.
Yeah, there's a lot on the line here. This is more than just comics, people. Like, this is this man's life.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's Scoop Volume 1, or Scoop Volume 1, and you have to make sure that you check that one out. Lucy was saying earlier that it's pretty important that you read the first volume. I mean, what do you think, Richard? Do you think you have to have the first volume?
Volume 2 was the new one. Buried Leads was delayed a couple times because of COVID and some other stuff. But even before all that, it was very intentionally made to be a standalone kind of thing, so that if you missed the first volume, or you read the first volume and some time has passed by and you don't quite remember all the details, everything you need to know is in the new book. You do not need to have read the first. However, I feel like, if you like the second book and you go back and reread the first one, you will see like all these connections and hopefully clever Easter eggs in there. And it is all like a very big serialized story. So don't feel obligated to get the first book.
No. Feel obligated to get
it. Get your asses out there and get the first volume. It tells you so much about her as a character, and I'm with Lucy on this one. I think I would go for both of them. But let's go ahead and move on to the highlight of the night, which is what Richard was just talking about. Scoop Buried Leads. This is technically volume 2, but it is a standalone, or it can be read as a standalone. Goes on sale on the 23rd, so a couple more weeks here. So where does this one start off?
So this one takes place, maybe about a month or so after the end of the last Scoop book. And Sophie has, without spoiling things too much, at the end of the last book, she's kind of revealed the first big evidence of paranormal activity in South Florida. And so she's become a little bit of a local celebrity, even though she hates it. She hates being on camera because with her dad in the news all the time, there's like a media circus that's been parked in their front yard for months, and they're always sticking their cameras in their face and asking her questions on her way to school. And so she hates the limelight, but she's sort of been thrust into it. And her dad, because she's produced this evidence of this conspiracy, people are starting to rethink the case against her dad. And so things are getting a little better at home, and he's actually able to start to leave the house a little bit. And Sophie turned 15, but because of all the drama in her life, they never really properly celebrated. So now that things are looking a little sunnier in the Cooper household, they're going to give her a quinceañera. And again, she doesn't really want the limelight, but she knows it's important to her family. And so she's balancing all these things. And while all this is happening, a local disgraced celebrity who's been accused of another pretty heinous crime, he sees these news stories about this girl who's like kind of cleared her dad's name, and he thinks, hey, the world thought Sophie's dad was guilty, and she's got them rethinking it. Maybe I can get her to help people, clear my name. And so he hires her, and against everyone's advice, her parents, Hal, her mentor, everyone, Sophie takes the case. And kind of Sophie's big challenge in this book is that she maybe starts to believe her own hype a little bit about how she can be this whistleblower and expose all these things in this mad quest for the truth. And she starts to lose sight of some of the consequences. So that's kind of the true crime case. And then she's getting more of these faxes and messages and these things that she had started to expose, the sci-fi elements at the end of the first book, they start coming out of the woodwork. And now Sophie's on their radar and they start to go after her. So it's very much about Sophie wanting to be kind of like off camera and on the sidelines. Now she's very much thrust into the middle of this big event that ties in UFOs, time travels, alligator people, mad scientists, and I'm sure I'm forgetting a couple other things. But it all starts really coming together in this volume. So
very cool.
Wow. I mean, I have a couple questions, but we have okay. So me, like what I like from volume 1 and this one, it was that you use a lot of Spanish on this.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming you speak Spanish.
Sí.
Sí.
Yeah.
¿Entiendes muy bien? Okay. I loved it. I like that you included all that, you know, that you show that she is Hispanic.
Yeah, she's half Cuban. Her mom, just like me. So that
okay.
Yeah.
And on one of the pages, like they are describing somebody, and right away I knew who they were talking about, like about Walter Mercado, right? And I was like, hey, I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's Walter Mercado, you know. And then all of us, they grew up and
wait, who the hell is that? Who's
Walter Mercado? Okay, well, this guy is on Primer Impacto. It's a news show. Pretty something that I always hated to watch because it would show the worst of the news, and they always had a segment of this guy who will give the zodiac
astrology.
Like he will tell you about your signs and stuff like that, and he will always say con mucho amor.
See, I didn't catch that. Only you see, Lucy, you're so good.
That's a deep cut, and I'm glad that you caught it. And yeah, he was this really sort of flamboyant personality, really sweet guy. He passed away not too long ago, but you know, I was born and raised in Miami. I still love visiting there and want to get back there as soon as it's safe to do so again. But the scoop books are very much a love letter. And, you know, Jen, you were saying you lived in South Florida. And so, you know, everyone there is basically bilingual, and they'll come up to you and talk to you in Spanish, just assuming you know how to speak Spanish. It's kind of this quirky thing about Miami. And, you know, so I just wanted these books to be a love letter to that and to be authentic. And we used a lot of photo reference for both books so far, because I really wanted to get the Miami stuff right. I think it's just an awesome setting. The diversity there is very natural. And I don't know, in my mind, I thought, you know, some pretty far out stuff happens to Sophie in these books, especially the second one. And so if her world feels grounded, if it feels like a real place, then maybe we'll be more willing as readers to go with the more fantastical elements.
And it's interesting because, so I'm also mixed, but I grew up in Chicago and I moved down there for like 11, 12 years. So I know like bits and pieces of Spanish.
Yeah.
And living down there, everyone's like, would you start talking to me like really fast? And I'm like, okay, slow down.
Right.
I caught like 5 words. But it made me go back and like look them up. Like, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Like, this is what this means. And then like, okay, cool. Like, cause you want to see what they're saying. So I felt like it was really good for that kind of thing, to like inspire someone to go look it up.
Well, that's great. I mean, that's how I just learned to read and write. I'd be reading Marvel comics, and, you know, Stan Lee or Roy Thomas would throw in some crazy multi-syllable word that I'd never heard of, and I'd look it up, and then, you know, I'd see it on the SATs years later and be like, all right, you know, they taught me something. So, you know, again, we talked about context clues earlier, and like, I hopefully when you read this, if you don't understand Spanish, you can still get on the page kind of what they're talking about. But you know, anyone can do Google Translate on their phone now. And maybe like after the second volumes come out, people have had time to read it, we can maybe tweet out some translations or something like that.
Or just message Lucy. That's what I did. I was like, hey, Lucy, translate. Tell me what this says. So Red Sabliano said, you piqued my interest at Alligator People, which we actually have a slide illustrating this. So can you elaborate a little bit on what this is all about happening?
Yeah, they're actually called the Alligatoids, and the lead one, his name is Hernan, and he's bilingual too. And basically there's a bunker that we set up in the first scoop book in the middle of the Everglades. And this is based on an actual weird bunker that is not too far from the home where I grew up.
Really?
Yeah. And it's my brother and I found it. It's on sort of government protected land. And we were just walking around exploring, and we found this bunker that is built into the ground, which is no small deal because it's solid limestone, but it's like professionally built. It's obviously the government constructed it. Our guess was like it had something to do with the Cuban Missile Crisis in the 60s, and it was like a defensive installation or like a first alert for like a nuclear attack or something. But it's just this empty, gutted shell of a building that's about 3 stories deep underground, like all these sub-basements, and it's covered in weird graffiti and stuff now. But anyway, that was the origin of it. So we have this bunker where these weird time experiments happen, and without giving away too much, the experiments maybe were not totally contained to the bunker. They may have affected some of the local wildlife and sort of accelerated.
May have affected the local wildlife.
So
he's wearing pants, Richard. I think
the alligators have some modesty, they're not totally wild. So they're quite fearsome, but Sophie is not too threatened by them, and they've actually befriended each other. And here we see Sheriff Firewalker, who's a sheriff in the nearby Mikazuki Reservation. He's maybe having a slight disagreement with the Alligatoids. So they're really fun characters. They actually play a cool role in the very ending of this book, which sets up the next one. So I love writing them, and I think trying to subvert expectations. Like, I think our artists do a great job drawing these hulking monster characters, but we wanted to give them a little more substance beyond just saying like rawr, rawr, that kind of stuff.
Oh,
there you go. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah. So, Rich, we have a question. So it sounds like Scoop is personal to you. Did you put your personal touches into work at Dreamworks?
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of don't know any other way to do it, like even with, stuff that's essentially licensed work, like I just have to find a way to make it personal and care about it. So I'm trying to think, in How to Train Your Dragon, I mean, it can be something like in the first graphic novel, Doug Wheatley, the artist, was very kind, and he drew my sons as 2 Viking kids that are climbing on Toothless in the opening pages. But a lot of the stuff between Hiccup flashing back to like conversations he'd had with Stoic and his relationship with his mom is very much, based on conversations I've had with my parents. I'm totally thinking of my wife when I'm writing Astrid. And then with Trollhunters, they established that Jim is a good cook, and I love to cook. Like, if I wasn't a writer, I would love to be like a personal chef. I'm not that great. My mom's a great cook. That's who I learned from. So in some of the books I wrote, I have Jim cooking recipes that are recipes that I make at home. Silly stuff like that. It's kind of more like Easter eggs for my family. That's
totally Easter eggs. I mean, how else would we ever know any of that unless somebody spoke with you personally, that all these little things that came from your real life? It's so neat, and it makes it even more special. The next slide that we have coming up here was personally my favorite panel in this book. Can you give everybody a little bit of an idea of what's happening here without giving away too much?
Yeah, so we actually, the Mangrove Man was teased at the end of the last volume. And so now Sophie, this is her first introduction to him. And he's almost like a Swamp Thing character, although he's not really there. He's more like negative space between mangroves, which are these very cool trees that grow in the Everglades. They survive in salt water. And a little fun fact for you guys there. And, its eyes are basically 2 fireflies that are floating in the shadows between the mangroves. And so it's sort of, again, related to these weirdo experiments that have been happening in the Everglades since the 1960s, the early 60s. And basically the Everglades have developed consciousness. And I don't know, this is a pretty old reference, but All the President's Men was a movie about kind of the Woodward and Bernstein's investigation into the Watergate scandal and Nixon and all that. And they Woodward had a source called Deep Throat, and the Mangrove Man is basically that sort of informant source for Sophie. So, we're trying to do like a little twist on journalism and take it more into like the sci-fi or horror realm in this case. And he's a cool character to write. And these 2 pages are setting off what is a pretty cool 2-page spread that you'll see.
That we can't tell them about, huh? We have to keep that part a secret. Jen, what do you think of this panel? I think that this is something that I could see you appreciating, the artwork and just how well this is done.
Oh, definitely. Like when I first, because I just saw the panel first, and then when I went to go read it, I was like, oh, it's a really cool idea. Because like mangroves like are almost everywhere. Like in South Beach, I think we have a couple places at like our parks that they grow. And then like, it was just really cool. Cause like, that's why I like just reading it kind of, cause I've been moved away for like 3 to 4 years. So it's just kind of like, I'm like, oh yeah. Like it
hits home for you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, whenever we feel homesick for Miami, we read Scoop. I do the same thing. So that's nice of you to say.
And even like Alligator Alley not really having any like cell phone signal, I was like, that's right, you don't have it. Because like once you're in the middle of like, because it's Alligator Alley, like you're in the middle of it and you're like, no, I don't have any signal, but it's just straight shot through. So, but still, I'm really like, oh yeah.
It is, the Everglades can be kind of like the boonies, you know, and growing up in Miami, we'd have a lot of field trips there. And I remember there was one where we went kind of on this tower and looked out and you could see the shadows of the clouds on this river of grass. And I was like, I've never seen like the shadow of a cloud before. And it's like, this just goes on forever. You'd be looking out there and you don't see any signs of life. So it's, I think, kind of a cool spooky setting. You know, we don't see too much of that in other like movies or TV shows. So there you go. And I if I can, I just want to gush about our artists on this book, Pablo and Kike. I think they are amazing and have like fully translated what I had in my head and took it and made it a million times better.
Yeah, hell yeah. Shout them out. They deserve it. The artwork on this book is incredible.
Yeah.
It is. I love it.
It captures it all. It's perfect.
Do you give like, when you talk, like, so you're talking with the artist, do you like sketch out anything yourself? Like, hey, I really want this shot, or like, how does that?
Not so much in this book. Like, I'll call out specific, like if I had, so like I can draw, but not at a professional level. But my rule is like, I don't ask an artist to draw something that I can't draw myself, even like in a crude, horrible way. So I'll call out like specific angles, like over the shoulder or close up, if it feels really important. But I always caveat that by telling the artists in the beginning, like, this is just a suggestion. You know, I'm the writer. It takes me, you know, maybe, a day or less to write a couple of pages. It takes you a day at best to draw one of these pages. You spend a lot more time with it than I do. So if you see a better way or a different way, or you need more panels or less panels, like, let's just talk about it. And that was, you know, I think collaboration was a big thing I learned at Dreamworks, and you know, just, I think comics is like the purest distillation of collaboration. That's, to me, that's when they're the best, you know, when like the story tells you one thing, the art tells you another, and you put it together and you get like this whole new meaning. So anyway, that's
Lucy, were you saying something about how this was done? You were telling me that you think that it would be perfect for like a show, right?
Yeah, which is because the way, like, I was reading it, and it just looks like it could be a show, more of a show, because, you know, from volume 1 to volume 2, and then it could continue, you know, and I really want to see volume 3. I'm so invested on it. I want to know what's going to happen. I can see that as a show. Like, would you want to push this to make it a show or something like that?
All I can say is I agree with you. You know, we're trying, you know, so we'll see. I'll believe it when it's actually streaming on Netflix, you know, or HBO Max or whatever. But yeah, it's, you know, I went to film school and all that, but strangely, like Scoop, when I thought of it, it was always as a comic first, and I feel like, again, that's how I learned how to read and write, and so it's sort of my native language, and I just sort of think in like panels. And so for me, like, I feel like the victory is there's a Scoop comic already. If something else happens with it, that's awesome. I love it, and hopefully they won't screw it up and fire me from the project and bring another writer. In the meantime, we got the comic, and like I just want to keep making more of them. This is obviously pretty close to my heart, so, you know, nothing would make me happier.
Yeah. Okay, I have one more question. So, like I was saying, Primer Impacto and all that, as you know, we grew up watching it, and they will show, like I said, anything. They will talk about, there was another segment about aliens and stuff like that, and I grew up watching Jaime Maussan. I don't know if you know who that is.
No, I don't know that.
No, he used to be on that one. But I think he's Mexican, so it was mostly on the Mexican kind of side of the news. But he will talk about aliens and stuff like that. So I grew up liking all that stuff. Do you like any Anthony's asking this question. Do you like any alien documentaries, or because he really does, and I do too. Do you like any, or a specific one that you like?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in terms of documentaries, another project I've been working on for about the past half a year is a graphic novel based on the testimony of Corey Goode, who's a pretty prominent figure in the ufology and contactee space. And he's got some pretty mind-blowing literally mind-blowing stories about sort of repeated encounters he's had with extraterrestrials and sort of a big conspiracy surrounding that. And I think, when he kind of read some of the stuff I'd done on Scoop, it was, seemed like kind of a good fit. So through him, I've been exposed to a lot of stuff. He's got documentaries like The Cosmic Secret, and I highly recommend those. Those are all, streaming, and you can find them on Amazon and stuff like that. But yeah, it's I've sort of been a lifelong devotee of the transmundane and the paranormal, and so that all filtered in here. And I myself have not had any direct UFO experiences, but my dad claims to have seen a UFO when he was a kid in Philadelphia, and told some pretty credible things. And I will say that Cuba and the Bermuda Triangle are pretty close together on the map, and Sophie's family comes from Cuba, so maybe some connections.
That's very interesting. I like the connections there. Now we're going to move on to the next screen while we're looking at this amazing sketch that Mike Mayhew did for you, right?
Yeah, about 50 years ago. My God.
It's so cool. This is the time, guys. If you're out there watching and you've been listening to everything that Richard's been talking about and the girls asking questions, if you have any questions, let us know now. Anthony will let us know what you're asking, and we'll see if we can get him to answer them. In the meantime, this is awesome. How did you get this done?
Mike Mayhew went to my local comic shop at the time, Legacy Cards and Comics in Glendale. That's still my local shop. I still go there. Mike's moved out of state, but he was, I think, doing a project for Civil War, Marvel's, Civil War, the first one, and they were publishing like a Daily Bugle newspaper thing, and he needed faces to draw. His art studio was like within spitting distance of the shop. And so he's like, hey, do you want to be in a Marvel comic? I was like, yes, of course. So he drew me, and he drew Henry, the manager. And so we're like in this Daily Bugle thing. And I have since used this photo, I think it's like on my Twitter and Facebook and all that.
As it should be. It's awesome. I mean, that's
cool. So cool.
It's so well done.
Okay, there is a question. Is it difficult to write a female character being a male yourself?
Oh yeah, that's the question. First of all, I will say it's difficult to write any character, male or female or non-binary. I think for me, the trick with like Sophie or Astrid or Claire is always trying to start with a place of intelligence and agency, and making very sure, and I catch myself this too, just because of the pop culture I've grown up on, actively looking for situations where it might seem like they're being too passive, or they might be the one that's asking a question that's setting up the male characters to answer it, and not doing that. And I'm not perfect at it by far, but as I said, I've got I share this stuff with my wife. She keeps me honest. My mom too. And, one of our editors on the book, her name's Holly Fisher. And she was really had some amazing notes, especially with buried leads that really opened up the story for me and Sophie's journey in it. So again, comics are collaborative, and I think I'd be pretty foolhardy to say like I could do all that myself, but I'm lucky to be surrounded by a pretty great team of people. So they keep me honest.
You and me both, Richard. I got the best team here. Look at these girls.
Yeah.
I actually thought, as I was reading it, I kept picturing, even though it's comics, so we're seeing a picture of it. I just kept that girl from the new It, from 2017 It, Sophia
Lilac.
I don't know her name, but she I think also played Nancy Drew in some movies, and she's a great actress. She'd be pretty awesome.
I just kept picturing, because of the red hair, I think the last time I saw her was I'm Not Okay With This on Netflix, and I just kept picturing, and I think she's like aged up like physically, but even voice wise, like if this was animated or like live action, I just kept picturing her, and I'm like, man, you did a great job with that character.
From your lips to Hollywood's ears.
Yeah, like I did notice, the female characters, they're pretty strong, like the mom, she works with, where she works and stuff like that, like, and dealing with everything that is going on with her and still trying to keep her household together, and then Sophie, like, trying to uh you know dealing with school and trying to find proof of her dad's innocence and stuff like that. It's just like pretty strong female characters, and like, obviously I like that. I like that very much.
Well done, Richard.
Gratifying to hear that. I think you guys would have torn me apart on this show if it was otherwise. Very happy to hear that. Thank you.
We have a question. When is this on sale?
Oh, great question. It drops on February 23rd. You can pre-order it now. Please start with your local comic shop, like say Bird City. But wherever your comic shops are, it's carried by previews. The price is $12.99. It's 92 pages of story and art. I think it's a real bargain. And if you haven't seen any of Inside Comics' other books, they're really, really like slick. They're on great paper. They have this spot gloss on the cover, and it's like they're really beautiful books. So you can get it from your local comic shop. If you can't find it there, you can get it on bookshop.org, which supports your local booksellers. And if you can't get it on there, you should be able to, but you can always go to Amazon and Barnes and Noble. They're all on there as well.
If you have to, right? But go
if you must.
If you must.
And you can also get the first Scoop book, Breaking News, on there as well.
Cool.
Very cool. Where can they find you?
Very seldomly on Facebook. It's my name, Richard Ashley Hamilton. And more often on Twitter, it's Regards Richard. It's a S after Regards. So Regards Richard.
Oh, typo. Regards Richard. Guys.
No worries. I think if you just search my name on there, it'll pop up too. But come say hi and make friends, and let me know what you think about Scoop or any of the other things. I'm often on there answering questions about like how to train your dragon stats and things like that. So I love talking about these things.
Very good. We are so glad we had you on. Like I said, I hope this book keeps on developing. And like Lucy was saying, she can't wait for volume 3. So get on that.
Yep.
Yeah, make it happen.
Start working. Can you please start working?
Yeah, get off this live stream and get to work. No, I'm just kidding. But no, thank you so much for coming out. Jen, did you have anything you wanted to add? Nope, we're all good. All right, Richard, thank you so
for
much.
having me. It's been a pleasure. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you later.
See ya.
Bye. All right, guys, that was our first segment that was dedicated to author and screenwriter Richard Hamilton. He is very, very cool. And like the girls and I have been emphasizing, those books are worth reading. They are so well done. They have beautiful interior art. And like Richard was just saying, they're pretty nice size, sturdy books. Before we go on to segment 2, a word from our sponsors. Quick shout out to our sponsors over at Bird City Comics. Head over to their website for an additional 15% off your entire order when you use code CBW15. Back to the show. Okay, so moving on to segment 2, like Jen just perfectly said earlier in the show, it's dedicated to all of our mystery picks. We wanted to kind of stick to that same theme coming off of Richard's books. So first up, we have Lucy's pick for Inola Holmes.
Yay! Okay, so I watched this one when it came out. I think it was like that week that it came out, September 23rd, 2020. And it's a Netflix original, so it's on Netflix. Millie Bobby Brown, it's the main character. She plays Inola. At first I call her Inola, but Inola. Inola Holmes. So she's the little sister of Sherlock Holmes. And this is based on the Nancy Springs novel, or is it
her novel series? Yeah,
novel series. Yeah. So this is the first one of her series, and so it's the little sister, the mom, she is missing, and the big brothers, they go and back to her house to look for her because the mom is missing. And the brothers are well, the other brother, Watson, I think that was his name. Oh wait, no, not Watson. I can't remember his name.
Like Minecraft or something
No,
along those lines. Something craft.
Minecraft.
Minecraft.
Yeah. He is, yes, there it is. He's trying to put her into a private school for ladies, and well, she's not gonna go for that shit. So she runs away. And so she goes on her own adventure. And like her big brother, she likes that the whole what do you the
Programs and detective work and following.
detective, yeah. And then she runs into this little boy, and she goes on a whole different adventure. When she was trying to look for her mom first, she ends up finding herself with another.
Who was the mom? What's the actress? It's Bellatrix.
Yes, I can't remember her name. Holy shit, since I did not write it
Jen, what is it?
I mean, she's been in a lot of different things. She's a crap.
She was on Mary to
she's
been I can't even remember his name either. She was in Harry Potter.
She was in
Richard just answered it. Helena Boham Carter. There we go.
There you go. Thank you.
I just know it as Bellatrix. I swear. Like,
yeah, me too.
That's just how I think of her. If Richard's still, we should have him hop back on with us.
Seriously,
if he wants to. I'll let Anthony ask me. But
yeah.
Richard, you're staying with us.
I never left. I was
We've never had somebody stay with us. That's very cool. So, Richard, these are just our personal picks. This is the one that Lucy chose, Inola Holmes.
Yep.
Have you seen it?
I have not, but my wife and my oldest son did, and they quite liked it. We watched all the Sherlock, the Benedict Cumberbatch ones together and like that, and yeah, they thought it was really cool.
I just started that one. I just started watching it.
Really we're not there yet. But this script was by Jack Thorne, who also wrote Harry Potter and the Cursed Child.
Oh,
right.
I think I was so drawn to this one. I was like, oh, okay. So overall, what do you think?
I liked it. It's definitely like for the whole family. It's something you can watch with your kids and yourself. And I really liked it. And I just watched it again for to kind of refresh my memory, because I watched it when it came out, and I really liked it. It has that. From the what I looked at on the book, she's 14, and on the movie she's 16. So they had to like kind of make her a little older to match her adventures, and a little bit like not love story, but like a little romantic, with her, with that other boy. But I really liked it. It was kind of funny. It had a little, the whole mystery adventure, and I like that. So I really enjoyed it, and I recommend this.
What do you think, Jen?
I saw it. I really liked it. I finished it, and I was like, okay, next episode. And I was like, oh, that's
how I was.
That's funny. I liked it, but I wish they would have I'm not sure what the target audience was here. It's like they dumbed down all the puzzles so much that there really wasn't a whole lot of that classic Sherlock Holmes detective.
I think it was supposed to be aimed more towards the teenagers because of the series. I just thought it had a lot of potential. I know they ran into a couple of I don't want to say a roadblock with the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's estate reached out to them, because basically copyright law, anything that Sherlock Holmes that is like him being very stoic and not heartfelt is already like it's free to anyone to use, but him being more heartfelt and caring is actually like later. And I heard that elapses in like 2023. So there is like some like legality going on behind the scenes. Like,
interesting. And I liked it as Henry. I love Henry.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so Richard, they actually gave him really bad reviews. What do you think of this? Because they said he was too good looking to play Sherlock.
What a nightmare for him, huh?
Poor guy. You're too
I don't know. I think like somebody like Benedict Cumberbatch was like cast perfectly, because he's like a good looking guy, but he's also like a little,
little weird.
maybe not traditionally, handsome, but I think he's got a lot of character. And I just think like Sherlock as a character, someone who's always thinking 10 steps, 20 steps ahead. So I have not seen this movie, so Henry Cavill might be great, but I like my Sherlock to always be looking like he's thinking.
No, he doesn't. I don't care if he's thinking. I don't care what he's doing.
I
just want to stare at him. I'm like, hello. All right. So that was Lucy's pick, guys. Oh, sorry, Anthony.
I was going to ask her real quick. Like, I like that they did the female judo instructor.
Oh, yes, I have that in my notes, and I forgot to mention it. Go ahead,
It was
Jen.
really cool because they actually did that, like the female suffrage in England. Like they were like underground teaching females like how to do self-defense.
Yeah, I have it right here. I love about it.
Wait, Lucy, that's true? That's like a real historical thing?
I'm not sure, Jen, do you know? Like,
but that's what that was really like. So there's an underground like suffrage movement in England, and like that's why I got really excited because I was like, oh my god, they kind of just pulled that little nugget in. Like that made me really happy. But it wasn't considered like it was like on the DL, right? Because like it wasn't considered feminine to do this, but it was really important. I mean, because this is like after Jack the Ripper, like because it's not. I don't know. That was really clever, and I like that they put that in there.
I thought it was just for cinematic effect, but that's like a historical Easter egg.
In England, but I don't think it was. I mean, my faded memory is it's England suffrage movement. They did learn judo for self-defense in case anything happened. If anyone wants to correct that, they can.
Feel free. All right. Well, moving on to the next one. Richard actually just brought this up. This is my pick. This is the show that Anthony and I started watching shortly after I finished the series. So if you guys don't know, the series was written back in 1887 is when you had the original book series. But this show is actually very, very cool. It's a little bit more gritty, a little bit more dark. But like Richard was saying, I think Benedict does a great portrayal of Sherlock. What do you think, Richard?
Oh yeah, no, I think it's awesome. I think they also he plays Sherlock as like kind of on the spectrum, like very bad interpersonal skills, like obviously a savant, but is unthinking about other people's feelings, and it gets really obsessive, and I think it's so cool. And the name of the actor who plays Moriarty escapes me, but he is unbelievable too. And seeing those guys go against each other is always pretty exciting.
Yeah. I just started watching it, and because you mentioned it, Laura, I heard of it, but never really paid attention. And now when we started talking about all this, I was like, oh, okay. The episodes are pretty long on Netflix. It's like an hour and a half or something like that.
And they're
I was
pretty
like
intense too, man.
I was just like, wait, I'm like, is this like 2 episodes? Or did I miss something? Because it was pretty long, but they're really good. I liked it.
Well, they also heard it on the BBC, so each one's kind of like a movie, but the season's only 3 episodes long. So I hadn't seen them until I think maybe last year. Yeah, it was during the coronavirus. We had time to check out the show that everyone talked about.
Oh, that's perfect for binging.
Yeah, it's a good pairing between these two. I think that the chemistry between Watson and Sherlock has to be on point. And in this case, so if you guys haven't seen this show, it's a little bit different. So Dr. John Watson is a wounded war vet coming back from Afghanistan, and he meets Sherlock when Sherlock needs a flatmate. So it's kind of a more modern take on it, but it's clever. It's a nice, clever, modern adaptation of Sherlock Holmes, and it does feel fresh considering how many times this series has been done. But the pairing between these two, you have to have that witty repartee between the characters, and I think they nail it. So, Jen and I were talking prior to the show because I'm not sure on this. Jen, did we ever figure this out on what his first appearance was?
So that's the interesting part. So in comic books, Sherlock Holmes, I mean, he's had a lot of different books, but in comic books, it's widely known prior that the one that's on the bottom right is the 1955 Sherlock Holmes. When you Google it, that's what pops up. But then Laura was like, hey, this is like 1944?
1947.
47. And I was like, crap. So I tried like looking it up, and like it's really hard. So I'm like, that's interesting that like a lot of places will say that Sherlock Holmes, the bluer and white one is the first one. But if you found that classic comics, because even like I almost feel like 1944. So is that now like the first appearance? Is there an earlier one? So I'm like, this is like cool if you want to go out, if our viewers or anyone else
go
feels
an
inspired,
adventure.
right?
There you go, your mystery right there.
Yeah,
Like-
figure this out, because I don't know if we still have an answer, because Jen's right. If you Google it, first appearance of Sherlock Holmes, it's going to be that bottom one in 1955. So the 1947 one above it, I don't know. We're still, the jury's still out. So if anybody out there is watching and knows the answer to this conundrum that we found ourselves in.
Because there are newspaper comics that were predate earlier, but we're talking about like comic book. Like what's the first comic book binded adaptation? And like if you can figure that out, let us know, because we're like, I want to say 1955, but you showed that and I looked into it and I'm like, well, that does exist, so crud. Okay.
Well, hell, so we don't know. Comic women, we don't know, right? Somebody in the chat was saying, spoiler alert, that in this show, Lucy, you've probably gotten to this episode. Well, maybe you haven't. Sherlock kind of convinces Watson that his wound, his limp, is all on his head. It's pretty cool. Like again, you have like the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock, which is more, I think, physical attributes, and then you have this one where it's more of the workings of his mind that help him through these things. So
well, even that Watson guy isn't. I first knew that actor from the Office UK version, right?
Martin
and
Freeman.
then and then he was also in Black Panther as an FBI agent.
That's right. Yeah.
Me from all those Simon Pegg's movies. That's
Yes.
where I know him from.
All
and
right,
then
moving on.
The Hobbit.
The Hobbit. I love that movie. Well, we have to do a whole like Lord of the Rings issue one of these days, but I will nerd out on that because I love it. All right, next slide. So the next one that we have was Jen's pick. I have not read this, so tell us about it.
So Paper Girls, it's funny because when this first came out in October 2015, I saw a whole row of it. And I remember being like, huh. The person I was with was like, oh man, like Brian K. Vaughan, like you should get it. And I remember passing on it. And then when we had all this downtime, there's issues 1 through 30. I've read 1 through 5, but I'm really into it. Amazon Prime has officially greenlit it, and the writer for Toy Story 4 is supposed to do the adaptation of it.
Hey, we're speccing now.
I mean, I was kind of hoping that they would do what they did for Netflix with the guy who did with Charlize Theron, Old and how they brought Greg, yeah, and how they brought him on set and like had him do it. I was kind of hoping they would do that with this, but they're not, which is okay. Like I just, you always kind of hope.
Let's hope for the best.
I mean, but you always like, it would only make sense to keep, like, at least in my mind, to keep the writer for the comic with the screenplay. So like if Scoops gets picked up, why would you not pick Richard? Like
I couldn't agree more.
Like, right? But it's okay. Toy Story 4, whatever. Like Amazon, right? But the thing is like, and this is where I kind of realized it also, that The Boys is a very different adaptation as far as like what we're seeing versus what's in the comic book. And yes, they're knocking out of the park right now, but this is different than The Boys. So I'm really curious to see what Amazon does do with this material. And we were also talking amongst ourselves, like during this week, about like mysteries and how, like, I went to go on HBO Max and there wasn't a mystery section. So I would have a really hard time picking something for this segment because like everything I kept thinking, like kept coming to mind was either like a thriller or a horror, and it wasn't purely like mystery, right? And so it's just like I had a hard time. But this, I've enjoyed 1 through 5, and I'm now going to have to go seek out the other graphic novels or issues. But I mean, I liked it. Based in Cleveland, Ohio, or a suburb of Cleveland, Ohio, and having been a paper girl myself at a young age, like I was kind of like nostalgic a little bit because it's from the 80s. Kind of jumping around. I'm not.
Jen, I heard somebody describe this as Stand By Me meets War of the Worlds. It's kind of how this plot line goes. Is that accurate?
That's interesting.
Because you have the group of kids and they're like,
I was hearing that it was like a female version of like Stranger Things. And I'm still, again, I'm waiting to like, it's only 1 through 5 and it's 1 through 30. So I'm still waiting for it to kind of like unfurl fully. But like Brian K. Vaughan did a great job. He's done Saga and Why the Last Man. I liked the first 5. So it was mystery and like 12 or 13-year-olds. Like it just brought me back to like a tiny bit, like especially the first issue about like being on the paper route and like you're out in the morning and there's weirdos out there. Like I don't. It was
there's weirdos out there while you're on your bike.
Well, I mean, because who's up at 4 or 5 in the morning? Like,
right? Crazy people, right? Richard, have you read this?
Well, I have read every issue. I love Paper Girls, and I'll say it just gets better and better. I think it's like, what is it? It's just about 6 trades, I think. But the Brian K. Vaughan can't write a bad comic, and Cliff Chang's art is pretty sensational in this. And, the characters are all fully formed. They are young, but it's like, it's an R-rated comic. Like they use, I'd say language that probably most girls and most kids that age use, but it's great. And it's amazing. It gets to be like a really big kind of trippy story, but the emotional relationships between the girls remain really consistent. That's like what you keep coming back for. So yeah, this is a great one.
Yeah, this is one that I've been looking for, and I always see it right now. It's like a $25 to $30. So I'm cheap, and I'm trying and hoping to find something cheaper than that.
Well, hopefully somebody that owns a store who might hook you up.
There's also, if you want to read it, Image usually makes like the first graphic novel is like usually around $10. I think I saw a little bit cheaper on eBay or Amazon. And you might get lucky.
The graphic novel or
the graphic novel. So the graphic novel is the one you see that's like the blue with the pink cover. Okay. The all yellow is the first issue. Yeah. And you're right. Like, but every now and then you might get lucky because on eBay, I think between 10 and 15 before shipping. So you might get it for under 20. It's just setting your notice to like let you know when it pops up. Like, because I kind of feel like when it first got announced last year that it got picked up by Amazon, everyone went crazy. And then now it's kind of like gone back down. So you might be able to like on the stealth, like
Lucy, I got you. Yeah. It's all good. I got you, boo.
Okay.
You're fine. I got this. But Richard, you pointed out Cliff Chang's art in this, and I 100% agree. I kind of flipped through the one that we had here, and it's a gorgeous take on this world. I think that, again, it matches the tone, just like your artist did. And Jen was actually saying that she thinks that Scoop, if it becomes a long-running series, could become, a genuine mystery series that's seriously lacking from our research.
Yeah, I think that was kind of when you guys were talking about Inola Holmes, I was thinking about that because a lot of shows that or movies that they claim are mysteries for kids, they kind of dumb it down a little bit,
Yeah.
Not even if you're an adult, but even as a kid, like you can see the twists coming. So I think it's a real challenge to make like a credible mystery that, is worthy of any audience, whether they're kids or adults. So I think we did that with Scoop. Everyone else has got to say it. I'm a little too close to the story, but, I certainly agree. I feel like I can't think of any other shows out there that are doing that right now. You can have peril and you can have mystery, and you don't need it to be like R-rated or super graphic or anything like that. It's a fine line to walk.
And that's the thing that like we like through trying to find like a true mystery, right? Like other eras in history have that. Like Sherlock Holmes by far sets a precedent for having that. And then it evolved and changed through the times. And then I think like the Hardy Boys and then Nancy Drew, but then that's like earlier. And I think like Lucy, you're like, oh, like Scooby Doo, and I'm like, yes, but that's still earlier. Like if you ask like, a teenager from today, like, what's your mystery? They'd be like,
well,
and like,
I mean, Stranger Things.
But that's still like horror, like that. It's leaning into the horror, right? Like,
if the story is structured like a mystery, like in the first season, the kids don't know what happened to Will, and they are kind of like the Scooby Gang and trying to find him out. But it is definitely in the trappings of a horror story. So you're totally right. There's not many things you can point to and say that's just the genre is mystery. It's usually like, well, it's a mystery set in a superhero world, or it's a mystery set in a horror thing. And
it's WandaVision, right? That's the mystery.
Right.
But it's
totally.
But I was just surprised that like HBO Max, which is like a new thing. When I was like looking through, I was like, "There's not a mystery section." That's weird. And like, well, it's thrillers. I'm like, no, thrillers is different than a mystery. Like, and even we're talking a little bit about amongst our own chat. We have like a texting chat about the new Batman, Robert Pattinson, and how like. We don't know for sure, but they're saying, hey, that's more of Batman being a detective. And I'm like, wow, we've never seen that. Like, it's always been him, like, busting heads and, like, using his tech. And it's like, okay, that's cool, but he's a detective. And then I think, Laura, was there a comic with Batman and Sherlock?
Damn it. Yes, there was.
Anthony said Detective Comics 572.
Which is...
That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. And that's like a book you can probably try to find like on the cheap if you can. But that's a cool like detective. Like cool. Like he's trying to figure things out. Let's see that. Like so, I'm really hoping that people's spec of that movie is correct because I want to see a detective Batman like truly.
Yeah. I could have sworn that Matt Reeves said that's like his take. Like he wants to do like the Dark Knight detective. Maybe I'm fabricating that now, but that's the Batman movie I've wanted to see for the longest time. So I'm stoked.
See, Ultra Maximus says that Lock and Key, and then Comic Book Barbarian Riversdale. So those two.
Riverdale.
Lock and Key, I could kind of see that a little bit. Yeah. We talked about a series of unfortunate events, which I guess could be considered a pretty solid mystery there too. Yeah. It's just interesting that genre is missing, but like. Richard, again, kind of to circle back to what we were talking about earlier with Inola, when you're writing for this teenage group, I was reading up on some reviews when I was doing the research for that show, Lucy, and everybody keeps on having the same point that you're writing to this generation that's so busy on their TikToks that they just don't have the attention span, I guess, to sit there and really think out an issue or a problem, and that's why they kept Inola so simple, so that they didn't, I don't get it, but so I think it's actually a challenge for you to try to target that age group when these kids are so easily distracted.
Well, see, what I like is that you use like she's using her phone, a lot while, doing
anagrams over and over and over.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, I get it. Inola spelled alone backwards. Like they didn't even let you figure that out for yourself. Like everything was kind of given to you before you had a chance to really think about it. And is that dumbing down the audience or is it dumbing down the content? I don't know.
It's hard to say. I hope it's not dumbing down for the audience because I feel like that's kind of a vicious cycle. Like you start to write down to the audience and then they expect that. And then it just kind of keep writing down. So I always like to, challenge the audience or the readers.
Yes.
I assume they have a certain level of intelligence, and because I hate when I'm talked down to. I hate like when I see my kids watching something and it's talking down to them. So.
Yeah, but my kid was on her phone the other day and ran into the wall, and I'm like, you're not really representing your generation, She's in there, boom, and I'm like. Look out for 2 seconds. Like, wouldn't it be interesting? Anthony's pointing this out to put a bunch of like teenagers in an escape the room. And see how many of them can figure their ways out.
Oh,
I would love to see that.
Fantastic, entertaining. Are those the words you're looking for? Great parenting. Let's take Richard's kids, my kids. We'll take Lennox, and we'll shove them all in a room.
Well, because if you look at like I grew up with Boxcar Children. Like I remember reading it and like having fun with it, and like you're like, and it's it's for kids, but like it's learning and even like misdirection, right? And you're like, oh man, I didn't see that coming because of this. But when you watch like TV and movies, like a split second of a screenshot, you're like, okay, well that's on purpose. Why are they showing me this thing? And then you're like, oh, that ties to this later. And you're like, I don't want to say that like the younger generation doesn't. I just think that they're maybe missing it right now. You just need something like Scoop
to activate that.
Yeah, because it gets you like thinking like investigative journalism like has kind of gone down a little bit, and it's more about like headlines. But it's like in the olden days, like they literally had to go and like do investigate, and now it's just like, well, what's clickable? And then you click on it and you're like, well, that's not the story I clicked on, right? But like I feel like that potential is still there for us to like consume and to get back into it. Like we just need
Richard.
Great. This has been like a wonderful therapy session for me. Myself right now. Thank you all.
Sorry, we got off on a tangent again. Damn it.
No, I total agreement. You know, it's I think the term is shoe leather, which is like when a reporter or a detective actually does the work of like walking around and finding out the clues and stuff. And this is me on my soapbox here as the dad, but you know, just with like our kids' generation, they're so accustomed to everything. Just it's like instant gratification. You know, whatever you watch, you can stream, and like you know, we'd have to wait a week between episodes of something, and there's something to like that delay of gratification, and to like it lets your imagination fire. And I've noticed that even watching WandaVision with our sons, that they actually love the week in between and the anticipation and what do you think is going to happen next? And what, you know, like, so, and we talk about it all week long. And then it's an opportunity for me to like say, well, in the comics, you know, they were raised in Wundagore Mountain and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And like, we just dine out on it. So I really hope we could get back to that. And yeah, that'd be cool if Scoop was the answer to all that. That's put a little bit of pressure on that book. We can.
I'm putting a lot of pressure. All of you guys out there, if you want to be a good parent, order Scoop for your child. Otherwise, yeah. But okay, so the last thing, so there again, you guys, make sure that you order that on your local LCS if you have it, or Barnes & Noble, Amazon. What was the other one?
Bookshop.org. I think it's just local booksellers. Basically, one of them will fulfill your order, so they get the business, and their prices are just as competitive as like Barnes & Noble and Amazon. So
yeah, and then follow Richard on Facebook and Twitter. But so for the last slide, for the last main part of the night, we did do some honorable mentions because the girls and I were struggling so much to narrow this down.
Yeah,
we don't have to do. So go ahead.
See, I had to pick Holmes and Watson. Like it's such a funny I just like you have to, and it has such a bad reviews. It's crazy, but I love it.
We were just talking about dumbing things down, and there's Will Ferrell.
There you go. And Clue, that's another one that I show my son, 10-year-old, and he loves it. Like we have watched it like a few times. I love this movie. And last year, I believe it was last year that we decided to stay up, and I was like, oh, let's watch this. It's on Amazon. And I thought he was going to fall asleep. No, he was so into it. He wanted it like figured out who was the killer, you know? Mm-hmm. And I showed him again a couple weeks ago, and and I told him, oh, they have a board game. And he's like, I want to buy it. And we saw it at the store. And he's like, I want that game. I want to play it. So it just,
he wanted a game that wasn't on the TV.
I know.
What?
Right? But it's such a cool movie.
I've not seen
I love it.
Now I want to watch it.
It still holds up. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. And right now somebody mentioned Knives Out, and it's it's very similar. Clue and Knives Out. I think that's what the name of it.
Knives Out.
Knives Out. Yeah. And those two, like when I watch it, I was like, oh, it's kind of like Clue. I like it. I really like it.
There's another one, an older movie. I think it's called Murder by Death, and it's sort of like Clue. It's like a murder mystery, almost by way of like Naked Gun or Airplane. And I think if you like Clue, you like that one.
Oh, I'm gonna look for it. I think.
Yeah.
That's another one to look up. Then I included Sherlock Holmes because, again, this is one of my favorite series. There's 2 movies. They were both directed by Guy Ritchie. Hopefully you guys have seen these. It's, a gritty late 1800s backdrop for the movie. Really awesome soundtracks. The first one, the villain is British Lord Blackwood, who is played by Mark Strong. I liked the first one, but believe it or not, I like Sherlock Holmes: The Game of Shadows, which is the second one. That one you see Moriarty, played by Jared Harris, and he is fantastic as that villain. So, have you guys all? Lucy, we'll start with you. Have you seen this?
This one right here with
these two movies. There's two, yeah.
I don't think so.
You have to watch this.
I mean, with Robert Downey Jr., yes, but
yeah, and Jude Law, like they're fantastic together. Yeah. It's a little bit more physical version of Sherlock, and he's, I mean, probably not kid appropriate. He's like doing opium and stuff, but I mean, it's a really good movie. I love the way it's shot. Guy Ritchie takes a really cool take on it. So when before he does something, he kind of like thinks out the steps in his mind and then executes. And it's really neat. Have you seen this one, Richard?
Yeah, both of them. And, our oldest son, he's seen them and he loves them too.
Awesome.
Robert Downey Jr. fan from the Marvel movies. And then I think, aren't they making a third one? I'm pretty sure they
are. It's supposed to be coming out this year, isn't it?
Oh, really?
Yeah, we'll see about that. But
I know, I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, they're gonna delay this thing, and it's gonna make it.
Is it maybe that's why they added on Netflix?
It says Sherlock Holmes 3 is supposed to come out in 2021. Huh. Supposedly in December of this year, this should be dropping, which I'm really pumped about.
There's vaccines.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. It might happen. Hey, do me a favor, Richard. Can you read the question or the comments, I should say, that Anthony posted in our private chat?
Let me see. Where is it?
At the very, very bottom, Harry Novak pointed out.
My two early teen nieces couldn't focus, take 30 minutes in the escape room with us, couldn't solve the simple clues, and just wanted to get back to their phones. So sad. Yeah.
Oh my God.
That sounds pretty sad. I mean, were they trying to look up the clues on their phones?
No, they probably just wanted back to their phones. Anthony was saying we should make it like a PG-13 version of Saw, like put them all in there.
Yeah.
We are so evil. I think, Jen, once you have kids, if you have kids, like that's how.
It'll be funny if you have kids. Yeah, it'll be funny.
In defense to those kids, I've done exactly one escape room in my life. It was a team building exercise when I was at DreamWorks in this one department, and it was supposed to bring us together, and it just led to the total collapse of our team. It was like a bunch of adults in there, and it just pointed out like a fundamental lack of leadership and respect. It was a mess. It was a mess. So I wanted to be checking my phone instead of doing anything other than that. Well, I hope those nieces turn out okay. Harry Novak.
I've done one, but I was totally intoxicated with a couple friends, so I was not helping. I was just irritating Anthony. Kind of the same deal. It ended badly. All right, so that was the last slide for this show. But next week, guys, make sure that you tune in to Comic Book Women next Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are going to be having author of Warcorns, who we mentioned a couple shows back. We got a hold of him. He's game. He's going to come on and talk with us. So Garrett Gunn is going to be on the show next Tuesday. So make sure, if you haven't already, to give the page a thumbs up and all that jazz. And again, Richard, thank you so much for coming out. We appreciate having you. It was so much fun. Scoop, sorry, I did it. Damn it. I did it. I'm trying not to add the S. Scoop Buried Leads. It's going to be available on the 23rd of this month. So, snag it up. Let's help change the direction of this generation back to critical thinking.
I love it. That's the tagline right there.
This is a movement. We're starting a movement. All right, girls, you have anything to add?
I do want to say my memory of Sherlock Holmes, my first knowledge of it was when on Star Trek, when Data went into the and then it was like him and Geordi, and then like when Moriarty becomes like sentient, and then they have to figure out what to do with that. Like, and I thought that was kind of cool because Data's trying to become more human. He's trying to like be more deductive and like notice things that other people would. So that was like my first iteration into Sherlock Holmes. So it's interesting to see like all the different like stories and medias like that it kind of just weaves its way into.
Yeah, everyone knows about Sherlock Holmes. It's like Batman.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that too. Very cool. All right, you guys. Well, hopefully you enjoyed the show. Give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, follow Richard, and we will see you next week. Good night.